Someone you just expect to always be there doing his thing. So we got some from Grandpa Guitarist from Emporia, Kansas. I like Kansas. I've visited a couple times now, and cool, weird, cool place. Let's see here. JJUK is a regular. Hogan's Hideout, Barry. And then we saw Chris Lammy's out there in the woods of New Hampshire in an undisclosed location. And so we're going to get a little, actually, and Chris can help out remotely because we're going to talk about that great Les Paul again, the one that just came in and we just brought back to life. That's been sitting in a case for a while. And that's going to be part of the show and part of the dialogue here. So, but yes, right now we're going to, I used to listen to Blow by Blow a lot when I was a kid. Yeah, so Jeff Beck had whether even you admit it or not, Mike and Hungry. How's it going, Mike? Thanks for coming in. Mike can also talk a lot about this Les Paul when we start talking about it. So I'm gesturing that way. That's where it is. But yes, the Jeff Beck news, in case you hadn't heard, Jeff Beck has passed away. Even if you're not like a person who owns Jeff Beck records or CDs or whatever, he's had an effect on you because of the effect he's had on rock music, on everybody, everywhere, because of his, basically he invented Led Zeppelin because Jimmy Page saw the Jeff Beck, group, the Truth, Jeff Beck group. Truth, I think it's called, with Rod Stewart singing, and he was like, that's what I need to do. I need to find a good-looking blonde guy who sings like a girl, can scream like a banshee, and a powerful, trio, guitar, bass, drums, and an amazing lead singer. That's going to be what I do. And so, and he admits to that, and that's what was the impetus to start Led Zeppelin. And we know how that worked out. So Jeff Beck has had a knock-on effect on everybody's life with his music. And so even if you weren't, didn't love the 80s, super shreddy stuff, although he never was even when super shredding, he was always tasteful. So even if that's not a thing, I'd say, pardon me, I'd say that he's had a big effect. And so, so a couple other people were mentioning that they heard the news about that. Bob Bennett, how you doing? And he kind of invented the genre of the singerless trio too. With he kind of with his work in the 80s and the Blow by Blow and Jeff Beck's Garage and that kind of stuff, like. Or the even when Rod Stewart would sing on a Jeff Beck record or something like that, it was a Jeff Beck record, and the guitar was the main thing. For me personally, if I'm going to tell a personal Jeff Beck story, it's when he played lead guitar on Roger Waters' "Amused to Death" record in 1993, I think it was. No, earlier than that, maybe. That I really went like. Because I was like, oh yeah, Jeff Beck, I love his blues stuff, but all that like woo 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 stuff, I don't. But because he kind of took stuff to another level, he got the blues down, and then he just kept running, and he just reinvented the instrument. And what he ended up doing, I think, wasn't my thing until I realized what it was. Until sorry, I'm a bit of a knock on cough here because I was sick last week on the weekend, but also I was practicing with my band, and we're doing a wedding, and we're doing a bunch of R&B songs, and I was singing like crazy. And whenever I sing a lot and really hard, the next day I have what appears to be cold symptoms. I'm stuffed up, I got a sore throat, and that's how I know I'm doing it right. So Garage is fantastic, LP and CD. Jeff Beck with Jan Hammer, yeah. I would also say that there's nothing he did, nothing he put his stamp on that was bad. Like, there was never a period where, like, oh, I really love, I don't know, let's think, David Bowie, but man, when he did Tin Machine, he lost me there, someone who has a career, and every time dependably putting out records of great guitar playing, even if it's not even if it appeared to me to be not my thing, you could just recognize it for what it is. And later on, I kind of, as I went back and listened to the 80s stuff with a fresh ear because of that. All right, so anyone else? So once again, Guitar Talking Gary's Guitars. If you have questions, put them in the comments. Things you want to talk about other than the late Jeff Beck, put that in the comments. If you want to join in the discussion about things, put that into the comments. And if you're watching this after the fact and not when it's live, you can also write things in the comments and we'll get to it next time. And not a lot of people do that. And a lot of people watch this and just don't comment at all, which is fine. That's exactly what this is for. My vision for this thing was when I cook dinner, I put on YouTube. So this is around dinner time, and I would be like, just put it on YouTube and just listen to someone go on about something. And it was just a comforting way just to be able to work and not, pay close attention to something, but get informed about something. Beck is one of the most influential guitarists of all time, right there with Hendrix and Van Halen. Jeff and Imelda Ray, that stuff was excellent. And that's true. Like I said, even if you don't recognize his direct effect on you or you're not particularly a fan, he innovated. And now we're entering a stage where we're going to be losing our heroes rapidly because a lot of our heroes all came up in the mid 60s and they're all, and some lived hard lives, and so they did some damage and some of them are hanging in there, man. Like who would have put, what would be the odds if you were an odds maker in 1986 and taking odds on Keith Richards living another 40 years? What would be the odds on that? You could have made some serious money if you betted on Keith Richards living to beyond this point, for sure. So, but yes, heroes. What do you think about the Epiphone Casino Coupe? That's a good question. Thanks. I kind of like them. We've had a couple come through here. That's the kind of 339 body, I think. Is that what it's just a scaled down body, but a 335 kind of thing, solid in the middle. If you can get one used for $300 to $400, it's great. New, they're like $600 or more, and it's also okay. But I think because of the Epiphone price increases, everything's going up. We know that. But particularly when Epiphones became $600 guitars and moved their production to where they are now, Indonesia and China, if I put a Chinese-made Gretsch next to a Chinese-made Epiphone for roughly the same price, the $400-ish Gretsch versus the $400 Epiphone, Gretsch blows it out of the water, I think. Just in playability, feel, fret, work quality, and just the overall package. The Fender, the factory that Fender has licensed in China to make Gretsch guitars, doing a great job. Some of the newer Epiphones, they're hot. I'm a little hot and cold on them, but good value if you get one used for sure, and a fun thing to play. I hope Keith Richards lives forever. Yes, I do too. I'm glad that he's still doing it. Roger out in LA, how you doing? As a player, but maybe as an artist, a cultural icon. Yeah, Keith Richards is a cultural icon too. Yeah, and a player, undeniable. So let's we're just reaching that point where a lot of these guys we're gonna have to do this a lot more. These people who are kind of part of our lives for our entire lives. Like, have I ever known a world without Keith Richards? I haven't. So let's hope he stays around for some time more. And the same thing with Jeff Beck. I guess I've never lived in a Jeff Beckless world, and now I'll have to. But leaving all that music behind, also amazing. That's all government subsidized. And that was referring to KR is the most overrated player. Oh, so Keith Richards is government subsidized? Keith Richards is the most overrated player. Ooh, that's tough because here's the thing. If you count the notes per minute, maybe. But the dude wrote the bass line to Sympathy for the Devil. That was amazing to this day. He wrote all those riffs, all those open G. And no, he didn't invent open G. And Grant, was it Grant Parsons is the one who showed it to him. But he took it places, and and then not only he. Here's the other thing: Pete Townsend did a lot of open G. Jimmy Page did a lot of open G, and that Keith Richards was the first of that kind of thing. So that's huge as a player. His ability to have a tone and a sound, I can't question that. So I can't agree with that estimation that he's overrated. But I'm also Satisfaction, that riff with the fuzz, yeah. But I'm also of the mind that Eric Clapton's overrated. I wouldn't say that. That's and them's are fighting words in the guitar world. I think that is people get a little. Someone out there, somebody throw punches at me for saying that Eric Clapton is overrated. I saw Keith at Madison Square Garden in New York City at the Crossroads Festival. It was incredible. Okay, especially with the Expensive Winos band, Steve Jordan on drums, the original with Ivan Neville on keyboards, and you're just a stellar band. Can't argue with that. I saw Eric at the Madison Square Garden, was disappointed. Maybe he's had an up and down rocky career. He's had his substance abuse stuff. Someone's sorry. He's had his. I hope someone came to the door and tried to get in, but I'm working over here. He's had his ups and downs personally, especially, and I just lost my train of thought a little bit there. And we can make excuses for that, or whatever. His career's come and gone. Just the Eric Clapton thing I'm talking about. Not a huge fan. I don't feel. I mean, his influence is big, but the New Barbarians, yeah. We're closed. Yes, that's the sign on the door. But I'm sitting here acting deceptively open with the lights on, so maybe he was hoping that I could help him out. I'm sorry I can't, but I'm here if I wasn't here by myself, I would just go see what the guy needed. But he was looking in the window at stuff too, so maybe he just wanted to look at stuff. Let's talk about this. There's this, and I should have brought my own as well. I'm going to get back to talking about this for a minute. This is the Gold Top Deluxe Les Paul that we're selling. We threw it on the Instagram, and Instagram blew up because these are harder to find these days than ever. So, my apologies for playing it upside down. I want to talk about I own a Deluxe as well. And so people ask quite a bit, and I see this, they're like, what's with the mini humbuckers? And I have to explain it. So I thought, well, maybe this is something to talk about on the live show. So everyone out there also just chime in with your opinion of humbuckers, mini humbuckers, or P90s and Les Pauls. Les Pauls originally had P90s. They switched to humbuckers, and then they switched to mini humbuckers. Famously, Neil Young had a P90 Les Paul with one of the humbuckers swapped to a mini humbucker that came out of a Firebird. So, and then also famously, there are artists, I know for definitely Vivian Campbell, who he has a Deluxe that had the that was routed out to fit regular humbuckers. I know this because the guitar has been in here because he lives nearby here, and he brought it in for some work. And he was like, boys, is it all right if I come back today for this one? Because it kind of means a lot to me. I'm like, oh, yeah. I can definitely understand that. So people would convert these back before everyone, I think he got the Deluxe because it was what he could get in, I think it was Northern Ireland at the time, or maybe he was living in the UK at the time. Well, he is the UK, but, the Great Britain and England. But it was either just hard to get over there, and so he got one that had, or I think he said his local store did it. And the conversion is not that bad. Some of these you find them hacked up a bit when they get converted. Chris, if he's still out there, famously called these the boo-boo rings. So they put them on the gold tops because the gold paint would blow out, I guess. So I get a deluxe because, as you know, you may or may not know, I play guitar left-handed. And so if I want a left-hand Les Paul, beggars can't be choosers. And one came into the store, and it was deluxe. And I've always been very picky about Les Pauls. And I've had Epiphones, and I've had other, and I've tried out a lot of Les Pauls. But growing up, my brother had a 1970 custom. So in the house I grew up in, there was a 1970 Les Paul custom. Played smooth as can be, sounded great, and it just created this expectation of Les Pauls to me for feel and sound that I couldn't quite get back to until I found the one, and it happened to be deluxe. I'm going to take it. I picked it up, played a C chord, and it wasn't even in tune, but I was like, I knew I had to get the deluxe. And so let's check with the room for a second to see if anyone mentioned their feelings about deluxe pickups. I love all pickups. That's a good point. I stayed open late yesterday for me to get my sweet. Oh yeah, okay. He picked up his amp yesterday. I remember that now. How much? Asked the guy who can't afford it. Okay, so the price is starting at $69.99, $69.99, just under $7,000. Because it is 100% original. There's not a cap changed, not anything. It's got the nylon saddle pieces. We opened up the back to inspect everything. Everything's original. Everything works fine. It has this little bit of wear right here where someone's arm sat here and wore some finish down, and the metal, this gold tops have metal flake in the paint, not gold necessarily, but metal flake, which oxidizes, and that little bit of oxidation is super common on these. Other than that, all the tuners work perfectly. They're all original. This is just in great shape, and so that justifies the price. In the open market, you can find them for five to as much as people want to pay, but for as low as $5 if they've been dinged up or something. There's not a ding on it, not one ding. Everything's it sat around for a long time. Original frets, they are the flat frets, but they're still fine. Like we were talking about these last time, we were talking about Les Pauls. The frets came out of the factory flat, so it's not necessarily wear. Okay. Look good with that gold Les Paul. Yeah, thanks. Love the gold tops. Yeah. I hope that wasn't Vivian. Yeah. Sorry, man. Have you ever played a normal Strat flip like Hendrix? Yes, I did. I have one. My first one was a Kramer Striker that was reversed. And so, kind of trying to reclaim the 80s in my heart, I went and found a Kramer. Someone had a Kramer Striker that I said, I'm going to buy this and convert it and kind of get back to that. Very uncomfortable looking back on it. So when it was all I knew, it was fine. But now it's like after I played it for an hour, I'm like, I don't know, man. I kind of want my regular Strat back. So I don't. The conversions I have are usually symmetrical guitars, acoustics that are ladder braced and arch stops and stuff like that. Some people like to play left-handed. Left-handed players like to have a specifically right-handed guitar that's upside down. They'll have a fashion thing, so they'll have a cutaway like. Carl Wellinger from World Party always has the cutaway on the wrong side. He's never had a guitar with the cutaway like where it goes. And I think he just likes to make a point that this is a right-handed guitar that I'm holding this way because he also plays with the strings strung the wrong way, meaning right-handed strings. It's actually 24 Garrett gold paint. Yeah. Joe Bonamassa might want it. Yeah, we'll put out the word. Booba rings are goof hiders. I have one too. Nobubu rings, 73 red wine. The minis are a little sharp for me, and I hope it is with you after this. And I hope it is with you after this one sells. And I hope it is with you after this one sells. Quite, there's a little grammar thing there, but yes, that was Chris Lammy saying that. Yeah, mine's so yours is deluxe as well. I don't. It's just a different sound. I guess sharp might be a word, like sharp, like like 5K or even higher, maybe 8K, like ouch kind of thing. Depends if you're. So what I did with mine, and this is something I explained, so I'll say this again. The mini humbucker fit into was essentially the mini humbucker bezel, the surround for it, is the P90 cover. And so it literally is interchangeable with a P90, even though it looks like there's more stuff in the hole. It's like a so I swapped the P90 to my neck. So I got a P90 here and a mini humbucker here. Just temporary swap. Kept the Gibson pickup in case I want to go back. And it definitely looks like this pickup is bigger than this one. It's just it's an optical illusion. The P90 is the exact same size. You do have to put the screws in a different place, but not much of a modification to do that. Having, just like Neil Young, actually had the P90 in the neck and the mini humbucker in the rear, worked out for him too. So that essentially gives you three very unique sounds. The P90 is warm, and because your neck pickup is going to be your warmest, and that gives me a really warm sound there. The both of them. The bridge is very, the bridge pickup on this is, like Chris said, sharp, daggery. And then you put them together, and they don't even interfere with each other. They just coexist because they're two very different sounds, two different pickups in different positions. It makes one bigger sound, and that's an effect I like. Downsides, I'm going to need to dump stuff, according to Chris. Oh, yeah, so you're hoping that your Les Paul will be here, which is fine, yeah. So yeah, Chris has quite a collection, and we talked about selling some of them. And he's got a 60 Strat. He's got a obviously that Les Paul. He's got a lot of pretty cool stuff. So hopefully, if it comes to the store for consignment, we'll let you know. Bronze flake in the paint, not gold. Yeah, like I didn't say. Yeah, it's a bronze. Good point there, Mike. I didn't say gold flake, but that would be something, wouldn't it? Well, someone else said 24 karat gold. Yeah. I always like Bob Marley's Studio LP, Studio Les Paul in natural. Yeah, the Studio. Let's talk about the Studio for a second. Same era as this. Man, the Studio was a much maligned guitar. You could get a Studio, especially even at the old Gary's Guitars or at the Guitar Warehouse where Mike worked with Gary. A Studio was $500 max. That piece of junk has got an XLR on it or something. I don't know, the low impedance pickups and people but now they've become quite popular and sought after. Go figure. Okay, just picked up so let's catch up here. I did a clinic, played bass with Vivian Campbell and his drummer in the 80s, and he was with Laney. He showed me a bunch of Hendrix and Beck songs he wanted to play. Nice guy. Yeah, a tremendous guy. Just really nice guy. Like he lived in California all that time, but he just kind of moved around here because he just kind of wanted to change of pace. He just did a huge tour with Def Leppard last summer, and that was a great success for them. So all the best to them for sure. And he's an amazing player too. He would get a guitar set up and he'd be like, "Oh, let me just see this for a second," and he just run a few licks. Oh yeah, that's why he's so much. That's why he's so in demand. Yeah. All right, I could buy that if you're talking about the Les Paul. Sure. Those Norlands, have a big volumes as well, which helps with volutes, big volutes, which helps with the neck falls and breaks. Yes, the volute was added, so you can see this here. Right here, they got a lot. Mine has less, I think. So mine actually, and maybe we can get to the bottom of this together. Get a couple experts out there. Mine was made in Kalamazoo because they had two factories running at the same time. And the idea that some people thought was, although people have really put the Norlin era, the 1970 to 1984, they just put all these guitars in the same basket. And I don't think, because you had 3 different factories making these guitars probably over time, so you had the Kalamazoo factory, then they added the let me get this right because everyone's going to be. They added the Nashville factory, and now they have the Memphis factory. The Kalamazoo factory was closed, and the Nashville factory, I believe, was closed. And now it's just the Memphis factory. Is that true, folks? People out there might know more. But yeah, the volute was added, that to the back of the neck to give it strength, because very common for these to have broken headstocks. Oftentimes, and I'll tell you this, folks, oftentimes when a guitar comes in, sometimes a guitar falls off a stand, sometimes a strap breaks, and that's how the headstock gets broken. But more often than you'd think, the headstock is broken in the case. That was with my 64 330. That's what happened. Came in. Guy opened the case. The guy who sold it to me opened it up. And the head, he goes, I don't know how that happened. It happened because it was fitting badly in the case. And the case this is in, when this came into us first as just like, check this out, see if it works, and it came in one of those 70s square cases. I was like, you got to get it out of this. Please, please, please buy a case. I'll give you a deal on a case if you promise to put the guitar in it. And I told them, because the way it was sitting in the case, if this part touches the back of the case, you're asking for a headstock break. If it fits badly in the case and it can bounce around, a trauma to the case, being dropped or being in the back of a truck or something, could cause a headstock break. Someone stepping on a case, like, I don't know, but we see it happen where the guitar is not on a stand but in a case, and it gives a headstock breaks, especially on SG. There's just so little wood there. Okay, let me catch up with the room. Which helped with next fall's just Nashville. Okay, so now they just have Nashville, so they closed down the Memphis. That could be true. I got a little confused on that. My dad says always put your guitar back in the case, in the original case. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one because it is, if your case is in good condition, it's the safest place for your guitar. But you play guitar less if it's in the case. So if you don't see it, you don't play it. So for me, I store some guitars in cases. I have some hanging, I have some out. But the case is, made to protect the guitar. Other than, depending on what the guitar is, my Hofner bass case protects the guitar like zero. Like, I can't believe, like, I traveled with that case a lot, and it sits in it in the studio. But like, actually, I used to, when I did gigs, sometimes I put in a gig bag because it would be safer than being in the case, because the case just didn't fit well anyways. And, you could hear it moving around inside the case. The case was badly balanced. And the newer Hofner cases that are replicas of those, they kind of did away with some of those design flaws. But my Hofner case is not safe. Speaking of cases. Let's check this out here. So let's see. Cover the anyone else have anything to throw in there? Just cover the deluxe. So mini humbuckers. Pete Townsend used them. He seemed to do all right. Some people were like, mini humbuckers. Those things are terrible. For really overdrivey stuff, the Gibson kind of PAF style humbucker is the best. It's what when someone noticed that we have a humbucking Strat over there, and essentially it's a Gibson humbucker. They don't put the Fender humbucker in that. we know what people want when they want a humbucker in the bridge, and Fender knows what they want to. And then they stole they stole a pickup designer from Gibson. Just the Shaw pickups that that Fender now sells, the Shaw Bucker. He was his pickups were in Gibson's. What's the best brand gig bag you recommend, and how much for a guy who can't afford it? Well, the more padding, the better, I guess. So, but the reaches, the really good gig bags cost just slightly less than a case. So for $99, you can get from just about anyone. It's just, Fender has 4 different qualities of gig bags. So we sell everything in the store that sells for more than $200 sells with a bag included in the price or a case. And you can't just walk out the store with a guitar in your hand, especially if you're getting wiped out on the price. If I remember doing that when all I had was $199 and the guitar was $199, and I walked out with the guitar in the box. I was like, "Can you have a box I can put it in?" Can you? And I kept the box under my bed and stored I think I went to college with one of my guitars in a box, not a case. That's just a vague memory of mine. So everything should have some kind of bag. Sometimes a bag lulls you into a false sense of security. I was getting in my car one day with my Harmony Sovereign. It was a very dry guitar. And I had my Sovereign over my shoulder. And I just hit the car door, just bumped into it. Just a punk. Didn't hear anything, didn't even think anything of it until I took it out and there was a crack in the side of the guitar about 6 inches long. Just that little, just hitting the side of a door with a guitar in a gig bag. So sometimes the gig bag can lull you into a false sense of security, even if it's padded. So be careful. And that Harmony never goes out to shows anymore because it's all solid, it's old and dry. Also, guitars you got to be a lot more careful with in that respect. We sell the Heller gig bags, Henry Heller. We got the Fender ones, the nicer ones from Fender. They're $99, I think, and it's $129 for the case. So, and some cases are a false sense of security too. A poor fitting case or just a not well made case can be a detriment as well. Mono cases, yep. They're not even, for what they are, yeah. So they're impressive. And so, yeah, some people walk in and say, "Does it come with a case?" And you're like, "Well, it's got a gig bag." I'm like, "What's that?" Or some people, a case is a padded bag. It's a case. It's just when we think of case, we think of hard shell case, wooden, plastic, molded plastic. But we get a bunch of guitars. The Cremonas usually come with a nice bag from Cremona. Well padded, well protected. Which brings me to flying with a guitar, actually, if I'm still freestyling here. Don't get a cheesy gig bag. Yeah, it keeps the rain off it if you get a gig bag. And you don't want to buy a $200 case if you have a $200 guitar, I guess, But let's talk about flying with a guitar, because that's something I've done quite a bit of. I've flown with a guitar, I guess, I don't even know, 80 times, maybe 100. And there's different ways to do it, but now all the airlines have different policies on guitars and what they'll and you got to be careful. You got to check with the airline that you're flying on. If you're flying on Aer Lingus, Irish people love music. Their dad had a guitar. Anyone who's working at that desk in the Aer Lingus terminal probably had a guitar in their home. They've got a lot of respect for musical instruments and musicians. They'll let you bring it on the plane. They'll put it in their first class, cabinet. They'll bend some rules. They often let you, even though the company policy isn't, you just especially. So the idea was, if you bring in a gig bag, you have to take it on the plane. So if you're standing at the gate and they're like, "Oh, you got to check that," it's like, I can't check this. It's in a bag. It will be ruined. And you start to make a fuss, and they go, "Okay, we'll find a place for it inside the plane." But the other side of that is, in case they're like, That is going underneath. Then you got a guitar in a gig bag in the hold, and now it's in more danger than if it were in a case. So initially, I just like to put it in a case, and only once did the guitar get damaged flying with it, like a lot of times. So oh well, and it wasn't like earth-shattering damage. It wasn't like broken guitar, but it was like this thing got thrown around a little, something. And it wasn't even a great case. I was maybe asking for it, but because the case was one that I'd epoxied back together or something, I think. But anyways, my only one negative thing. So sometimes you plan to fly with it in the hold and you put it in. But here's the good news. Because they make everyone carry their own bags and onto the plane with them, they check a lot less baggage. Your guitar is safer underneath. It's less likely to get thrown. It's less likely to be on a pile of crap. It's less likely to be lost if it's underneath. So that's the good news if you do check something. And it costs a bunch of money to check things, too, especially on the discount airlines. I buy from pawn shops, and they bring an empty case with me. Okay, yeah, that makes good sense. And then a customer here came in. He was like, they usually bought something. He goes, this comes with a bag. And he had a case. He had an empty case. We opened it up. So it comes with a bag. He goes, oh, no, I don't want that. My wife knows how many cases I have, but she doesn't know how many guitars I have. So he's hiding the purchase of the guitar from his wife by bringing an empty case to the store, putting a guitar and bringing it home, putting it back where it was. Pretty clever. Anvil flight cases, check it out. Those are definitely a step up. There's other premium makers of flight cases, but when you get where you're going, that's like so. Like if you're doing all the bands I've been in, budget tours of Europe, you don't have a road crew. You're carrying your own stuff around. Do you want to carry an Anvil case all over Europe? So what I would do is I brought a hard shell case and a gig bag, and we went to usually your first stop is your last stop, and usually there's a promoter or something somewhere you can take it out of the hard shell case, put it into a gig bag, and throw the gig bag into the van. And so you have the flight quality hard shell case that you fly on the plane with, but you either have a lower quality. What I use is a higher quality gig bag in that case. But Chris is in the legendary punk band, so maybe when he goes on tours, they get treated better. They get more concierge service. Do you guys have any acoustic cases for slim classical? Not particularly. Some of those oddly sized guitars, we'll have about 4 different acoustic guitar sizes, but if it's specifically slim, we'd have to we'd get the measurements off the guitar. The number of times I bought a used guitar and driven home with it wrapped in a blanket on the back seat is frightening. Yeah, wrapped in a blanket. And so when I was in college, probably the guitar that went to college in a cardboard box. I remember coming home. This was my freshman year of college, and we're all a little dumb back then. It was raining out, and I had my guitar without a case. We went and played an open mic or something, or like a talent show. I don't know what. It was probably November. It was raining, and I took my jacket off and put it over the guitar and went home without a jacket on just so that my guitar would be covered in the jacket. So blankets, I've done that too. That's for sure. I bought a bass once. Actually, this came up, how your phone gives you a little, your memories from, So 8 years ago, I bought a bass in a subway station in Moscow. It was a Cremona violin bass. It was wonderful. I wish I still had it. I sold it, and I shouldn't have. I sold it for almost nothing. I bought it for really nothing, but I sold it for too little. But hopefully someone's enjoying it right now. But I wanted a bass, and the Cremona basses are very cool. The Soviet basses, Soviet guitars do not play in tune well, but bass you can get away with. Actually, Mike, who's in Hungary, probably seen lots of Cremonas around there, because that was the nice electric guitar in the Eastern Bloc countries. So if Mike Endicott's still out there, let us know if you've seen the Cremonas, and if you see a Cremona bass, because also the thing is, it was a carved top and back. It was made like a violin because stamping out plywood is difficult if you don't have the technology, and if you have just workers who need to have work anyways. They just had everything was, and so we sell the Cremona guitars here, and they're also handmade. Like really like handmade, like dudes with well, not just dudes, hopefully, but people with chisels just shaping stuff, and not sometimes people say this guitar is handmade, but a CNC machine spits out all the braces, and you just put together like a puzzle, and then press the thing, and then send it to the next person. That's kind of how a lot of handmade guitars can be made, but they make them the old style. But the one I bought is actually carved top, cheap bass with a carved top, because they didn't know how to make the plywood, I think. Because plywood top, by the way, if you try to press, when we talk about a press top, if you take a piece of solid wood and try to press it into a shape, it will eventually find its original shape again. And so sometimes you see that, like cheap guitars that were kind of like bent into a certain shape, and then without the right kind of tension, they just go back to being flat. So even in Gibson, when their plywood top guitars were done for manufacturing ease, you put 3 plies together and glue it, and then stamp the shape into it, and then the glue dries, and it dries into that shape, and those 3 pieces of plywood kind of hold each other in place. And they can still have fallen tops, but in carved guitars, I have a carved top, arch top that has a kind of a falling top, which you wouldn't think, but all right. I haven't seen any Cremonas, but I'll be looking. Yeah, the Cremona bass. They make like a Beetle bass, because it's violin shaped. And Mike used to have a Hofner bass, violin shaped bass. It's got that sound, and they usually have a din jack instead of a 1/4 inch. You got to change that out. They do have a truss rod. Mine was maxed out, and then I defretted it because sometimes because the frets weren't in the right place anyways. But I had to change the neck angle so much. So I bought it in the subway station. The guy, I met the guy, like a kind of Craigslist kind of thing, with the Russian Craigslist. And the guy comes up and with the bass, and I knew it was a piece of crap. It was 3,000 rubles at the time. Was it 3,000? No, 1,500. So it was $50 at the time. He hands it to me, and the strings height is really high up. Anyways, he says, try out some English on me. He goes, good for a slap, really good for a slap. I'm like, this thing ain't slapping for sure. I looked at the neck on it. I was determined to buy it. It was just a cool, weird thing. I bought cool, weird things at the time and fixed them up. So I bought it, and I took it back to my place, and I took the neck off to see if, shim the neck. Someone put a pencil inside the neck pocket to shim it. Turned out, to make it work, I had to so the whole thing kind of folded a bit. And to make it work, I had to recarve the neck slot, the pocket, so that the whole the thing could have the right kind of neck set on it. Just kind of by eye, I was just like, well, this is too high, this is too low, and I got an old, really dull chisel that I could find there, an old one I borrowed off of someone, and I kind of fixed it. But I defretted it as well because I like fretless bass fine, and it needed it. And the frets were terrible. I still have the Hofner beat to death one. Yeah, so Mike had a couple of Hofners, sold one through the store here, and I still have my Hofner that I bought at the Guitar Warehouse in 1986 or 7. I had to go check the receipt. It was a lot of money at the time, $750, and it forced me to get a job. I saw it there, fell in love with it, said, I'm going to buy this. How much to hold it? 20% down, get a month to pay it off. So put the money down, emptied out my bank account to put the money down, then went and got a job working in the kitchen for 6 weeks. And then I paid off the base, and then I quit my job. And that's the story of my Hofner. It's worth a little bit more now. But yeah, keep an eye out for the Cremona, all the old Soviet Cremona bases, Mike. They are fun. Let's check for any more questions and comments out there in terms of about used guitars. So we got off on a tangent about guitars not in gig bags. Flying with a guitar. When I flew with my Fender bass, I took the neck off. It made it into something more compact that would go into the overhead. So I essentially took the neck off and put it in a guitar gig bag. At the time, I don't know kind of which style, whether it's Airbus planes had a certain length to the. Now two compartments next to each other. I think maybe on the Boeing they kind of. Oh no, I don't know. It was a case where a guitar bag would fit in the overhead, but a bass bag would not. So took the neck off and put it back on the other side, and worked out fine. Jeff Beck, Tele Strat or Les Paul? All of the above, depending on what part. So are you asking what part of which of Jeff Beck's playing involved those guitars, or which one he used? Sorry, I'm late. Lewis is here. How you doing? We're talking about Lewis. If you haven't heard, Jeff Beck passed away. And someone was asking about what guitars he played. When he did the Les Paul tribute album, he used the Les Paul guitar. Definitely seen him playing a lot of Strat. Definitely seen him on a Tele. So, which do you prefer? So, which Jeff Beck? I grew to like the Strat stuff, the dive bomby, really innovative, weird, cool stuff. But it wasn't what I was drawn to initially. It was the Yardbirds kind of stuff. I was like, that's good guitar playing. But I think it's because in the 80s I wasn't in the metal camp. Because metal went bad at some point in the 80s. And with pop metal, and I just didn't want to be a part of it. And at the time, I was listening to Squeeze and Elvis Costello and stuff like that. So I wasn't like things that were like seriously overdriven guitars and that kind of stuff. At the time, didn't appeal to me. And later, I went back and saw the appeal. Like, oh, that's a real voice. That's an interesting thing to do, especially with an instrument like that. I took the neck off a 59 Tele and packed it in my suitcase when we moved here. Yep. Shipped the lap steel and other things, stuff in the tweed case. Yeah. So put some stuff in the case, and then so the case got there, and but Mike has had the necks off a lot of Teles for sure. But that's one way to get your guitar to another place. Wouldn't do it a lot, but he was going there to stay, and man, he did stay. So I love those feedback bends with the bar. Yep. His later style could only be accomplished with a Strat. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That kind of like the way he used the bar, and that's what I discovered that through listening to that Roger Waters record. And I'm like, using a bar and bending, kind of in a lap steel way of making notes, dancing, do a dance in a certain way that you have to really listen for to get the real nuance of it. That was something cool. I'm gonna check here. This is the comments section here. I'm keeping up with because I am flying solo today. Just going to do my own time killing. Put in a comment here. So any new stuff? Oh, nope. The room has gone quiet, folks. What's going on out there? So I'll give, if no one's got a question or a comment on that stuff, I can give one more of my topics. Let me think what would be a good thing of a mini to tell you folks about. Maybe that. Let's talk about, and this is going to be, I'm going to make a video, a freestanding video, standalone video about this. But this would be the preview. This would be me practicing for it. Because I also we do these lives, but then I make, 10-minute-ish, 5 to 10 minute videos about hopefully a deep dive topic. And I've been busy as all heck these last couple of weeks and haven't really gotten to it, but the next one is going to be about direct boxes. So let's talk about them for a minute. This would be a little, so mostly direct boxes are used for bass, but sometimes guitar. There are things called direct boxes. So a microphone input is very low impedance, and a guitar output is very high impedance. So a guitar output is 7K ohms, and a microphone, like a Shure microphone, is 50 ohms. And so if you have a microphone input and it's used to getting that low impedance, you can plug a high impedance thing into a low impedance thing, but you get these kind of weird things happen. Even the input, if you plug a guitar directly into like a mixing console or the line input on a console, those are kind of attenuated for more like 200 to 600 ohms. They're still not really a guitar input. So when you have a little interface that says guitar, plug your guitar in here, it's still not really, it's not a very low. You see some VLZ, very low impedance, which is 50 ohms, like a Shure mic. So what makes these things low impedance? The matching transformer. Shure found out that by putting a transformer in the way between the capsule and the output, it brought their impedance down, which helped. Also, transformers have like a bit of an equalization curve. They shave off a little of the low end, a little bit of the high end, especially the little transformers you see in a microphone. And so it did a really good thing for them, which is feedback elimination. That was part of the SM58 design. So they took the Unidyne mic that didn't have a matching transformer. That a lot of them had the quarter-inch end on it. They made it low impedance, and they renamed it the SM58. And we've been complaining about them ever since. So when you take a guitar's output and put it into a direct box and plug the direct box into wherever it's going, let's use a bass for an example, because that's a better example. It does a conversion of the impedance, but that going through that transformer also does that wonderful thing that transformers do. Transformers will do phase realignment, because you have high frequencies travel faster than low frequencies, and their waves are shorter, but they travel much faster, and they reach their destination first. And this is the same thing that tape heads do. When you listen to something recorded on tape, you're like, man, that sounds so thick. It's because it's like a kind of compression, but it's not this kind of compression. It's this kind of compression. So that's why direct bass sounds really good sometimes, and why people choose to use the direct sound instead of a mic sound, or as well with it. But the other kind of direct box you see a lot have no transformers in them. They're just a preamp. And some of them become quite popular, but they're a preamp. They're not, they have a low impedance output, but they don't have a transformer in them. And that kind of the magic of the transformer is that phase realignment stuff and the thickening that the transformer can do. So my bottom line is, I like the old style with the transformer. But we're going to do a video. We're going to have a radial, one of those really expensive radials. We're going to have a Rupert Neve DI box and just a regular CBI off the shelf. And we're going to go do a little shootout. That's going to be fun. So keep an eye out for that. Did you see my Pro Junior question? No, I'm sorry. I missed that one. Sorry, I've been working here by myself. So what was the Pro Junior question? The answer probably is yes, because I love the Pro Junior, and so does Jeff Beck. By the way, that was one of the artists who used used a Pro Junior, and according to the engineer, Steve Lipson was the engineer on that, and I heard an interview with him saying like Jeff Beck took 5 minutes, British dude. He took 5 minutes getting his guitar sound for that record. He's like, hey, this is a cool amp, plugged into it. Like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Okay, let's do it. And that was it. He has such a reputation for being a guy who needs the perfect, absolute everything, and the humidity be at the right, level in order to do his art. Some of that is just talk, because he plugged into a Fender Pro Junior, an inexpensive Fender amp, super, a real tube amp, but volume and tone, and that's it. And he got a great sound with it. So Brian, because I can't, let's see if it came back here. See my Pro Junior question. I didn't see it, but could you re-ask it? Because I can't see it in the... Oh, picked up a Pro Junior 4 based on your video. Love the cleans, but realized I can't enjoy the natural distortion due to how loud it gets. So what pedal would you recommend? Well, thanks for the question, because that is a good point. Is there a new Danelectro 6-string Longhorn baritone bass? I thought I heard they were doing one. Yes, are they doing it 6-string? I have the baritone guitar, yes. And the Danelectro baritone guitar, you can put bass strings on it, like Fender bass 6-strings on it, because the scale length is particularly long. The Fender baritone guitar is shorter scale. So we have the Dolphin Head baritone here. I'm just looking over it. From Danelectro, that can be converted into a bass as well. Are they doing the 6-string, the Tic Tac 6-string bass? I'd have to double check, but probably I do like. So I bought a Longhorn, a new Longhorn. But oh yeah, back to the Pro Junior. Question was, can't get it to distort enough. Even at those 15 watts. 15 watts is a lot of sound. I would look into something. So we get the Electro-Harmonic Soul Food. I recommend that quite a bit. That's kind of the what they call the Klon clone. So the Klon idea or the overdrive idea, just a little bit. It's made to sound like an amp turned up. It's not meant to be specifically distorted like the MXR, or a fuzz or like other kinds of distortion. Its goal is to give you that feeling of being turned all the way up without being turned all the way up. And being that you can't get the Klon, you got to get a Klon clone, and the Soul Food is a fine one, and they're $100-ish. So that would be my first. Recommendation to try out on that. But just make sure you get a pedal that is doing that. Get a pedal that is just going to give you that little bit of warmth, and not be like the MXR Distortion Plus. I love the MXR Distortion Plus. I played one for years, 10, 15 years before I took it off my board. I like what it does to things, but the one I have now in place for distortion is a little less of it. It's not the Soul Food, but it's something that's also, it's the Box of Rock, and when you have it down, it just does a nice little turned all the way up sound that I like. Okay, let me catch up with the room here. 6-string, changing my tube and my tube driver pedal, but I feel like I'm reaching out for snake oil. Yeah, the tube and a tube driver, you can change it. It's going to make a 3.5% difference one way or the other. You're either going to like it more or not like it. But it's very Coke and Pepsi, So, at that point. I'm looking for a replacement bridge for my Dano. There used to be more replacements available, but now I only see the Jeff Sun. I'd say there is, I think it's Danelectro Parts if you Google it. Danelectro themselves sent us to a site. They said, these we don't have the part, but this guy's got all the parts. I think it's called Danelectro Parts or something. There's a site. Send me an email, Gary's Guitars USA at gmail.com. And I will try to dig that up. So Danelectro, the new Danelectros, a lot of them use Wilkerson bridges. The nicer ones, like we had the 64 series, actually we branded Wilkerson. But the cheaper ones will also have Wilkerson designed or Wilkerson bridges that aren't stamped with Wilkerson. And so they'll have some really good premium bridges for Danelectro replacements there. I have one Soul Food. It's clean. Well, yeah, it's not crazy. It doesn't get crazy, that's for sure. Dano Parts has some. Now out of stock. Okay. The original style is the Rosewood Saddle. Yeah, the Rosewood Saddle ones. Danelectro does still make some guitars with that. My Danelectro bridge, I would say the 12-string Danelectro double cut. It has an independently intonatable bridge. It's genius. The thing, I tune it once a year. It intonates so well. Because when you have a wound string, a skinny plain string next to a thick wound string, how are those supposed to share the same saddle? It just doesn't make zero sense, really. To micro intonate, like an acoustic guitar saddle would be too difficult. but the Dan Electro works. The Dan Electro saddle on their 12 string, that's a 12 string intonatable thing. It's a little bit of a pain to use, but it's fine. I want to replace the Rosewood one so it can be intonated. Yep, like I said, see if Wilkerson just has one in there, because they make the thing, the good one for Dan Electro for sure. Want no more hunk of wood for Dano Bridge? How dare they? Well, no, they still give you a hunk of wood if you want the, but they also offer the non-hunk of wood. My 69 Dan Armstrong Plexi has a rosewood bridge. It's amazing. Yeah. The bridge of my Dano 12 is genius. That could be the same one that I have. Yeah, the wood bridge was there's nothing on a Dan Electro that isn't a good idea. Other than they're not intonatable. Mike actually used to make intonated bridges. He would take a piece of rosewood for the old Dan Electros and just intonate it. And then, at least do the kickback for for one or two of them. And so you can intonate the piece of rosewood to have the approximate. But if you really want to sit there with a screwdriver and mess with it, then those exist as well. All right. Well, guess what? You've done it again. You've ruined another perfectly good hour listening to Guitar Talk. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Look for us on Instagram. Come see the deluxe Les Paul while you can. Like I said, there's not, I think, I dare to say it might have a ding somewhere on it. Is that a ding? The binding, but that could have come from the factory like that. They were it's in remarkably original, great condition. 99.9%. So check it out. And we have a Rickenbacker 365 coming out next week. We just had to I'm not going to disparage Rickenbacker because we have one to sell. It's really hard to adjust the truss rod. And so that I had to go get a special wrench and grind it down to try to because the regular, the one that's supposed to fit on there doesn't, because it's whoever routed, Dan Electros are made, especially in the 60s, they were definitely handmade. And they put the truss rod, they dug out, they didn't dig out for the truss rod now for where it's located, it's just. So we're going to finish doing that setup and get that out later in the week or early next week. So that's going to be a really great 68 Rickenbacker is going to be here. That has the stereo out with the Rico sound, or you can just ignore the Rico sound if you want, but it actually has the Rico sound module with it, original case. We got this Les Paul here. Sometimes I'll you look over the store and go we haven't had this much great stuff ever. But looking at the store, man, 175. Yeah. So check it out. Instagram, we do the walkthroughs. YouTube, we do these short form videos, and plus the live. Facebook, we're there too. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Stay warm if you're in the Northeast. Stay cool wherever you are, and stand by for the end.